This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded September 16th, 2013. Episode 163, with the founders of Upverter, Ramiform, Reciprocity, Raconteurs.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Chris Gamble's Analog Life.
Zach Homuth of Upverter.
Stephen Hamer of Upverter also.
Michael Woodworth of Upverter.
What are the odds of having all three people, all three guests from Upverter?
Dave, we're surrounded.
Worse than that, we're surrounded by Canadians.
Oh, man. I grew up surrounded by Canadians, so I'm
there
used
you
to
go.
You're welcome.
That's right. The poutine was delicious.
Thank you very much for coming on, guys.
Oh, thanks for having us.
They forgot to give their title, so I will do it for them. Zach is the founder and CEO. Steve is it Steve or Stephen?
I go by both.
All right, Steve it is. Shorter. Founder and CTO. And Michael is a founder and CIO. There you go.
CIO. What's a CIO?
That's a made-up title.
Oh, okay.
We needed a C in there somewhere. We wanted it to be technical. So we just started going for it.
CIO is information officer, is it not?
It
Yes.
is, yeah.
Oh, is it like IT type stuff, like the actual back-end webby stuff?
I do very little of that these days, actually. So,
Okay.
But yes, that is generally what an IT
But you
person
tell
does.
people what they should be doing, right? That's called management.
Yeah, well, some days. Some days I tell
Right.
them what they should be doing. They do whatever they want anyways.
Right, yeah. Well,
Mike is actually Mike's actually heading up our sales lately.
oh.
And
okay.
trying to figure out how we make money.
Oh, yeah.
From all the stuff we've
One of those
built.
trivial things like,
Right.
making money and eating,
Yes. not just ramen, right? Yeah, startup life and all that. So,
Yes.
who wants to give us the overview of people that have not heard of Upverter yet, who obviously haven't heard the show, because we've talked about Upverter as well.
Sure, yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
So at like the super simplest, Upverter is a multiplayer CAD tool in the web browser. And so it's a tool for designing electronics. It lives in the web browser. It's built on top of HTML5 and JavaScript, and it lets you just design circuit boards. There's a bunch of kind of cool community stuff and reuse stuff and collaboration stuff that we've baked in. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to build a better CAD tool.
Cool. Yeah, so CAD is not trivial to build a. So why did you say we're just gonna screw it, we're gonna start over and make an entire CAD tool, whereas maybe others were starting with existing CAD tools and like why did you decide to actually build the entire CAD tool?
So we kind of started by trying to build it on top of other people's stuff. We looked really hard at GEDA. We looked a little bit at Cadence and a little bit at Altium, and tried to build version control for them. Like if you could build Git for hardware stuff, or take Git, right? Like don't even rebuild Git, just take Git and make it work better on those files instead of having to build your whole own tool. Or GEDA, if we could take it because it's open source, clean it up a little bit and jam it into a web browser. And we looked at all of that, and it goes way back to like our earliest days, so like 3 years ago. And it was we were in my parents' basement in like a little tiny farm town in Ontario, and we were trying to jam GEDA into the web browser, and it was a nightmare. And we generally failed, and Steve can talk a bunch more about that than I can. But like we totally failed to do it, and that was why we ended up building our own.
So was it a startup from day one, or were you just sort of bumming around with this on the weekends?
So we were college roommates. That's kind of our story. That's how we met. So we were in the same dorm room at the University of Waterloo like 9 years ago, guys. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so we met. We were in the same class together. We all kind of like failed school together, and tried to figure out engineering together. And we were all kind of startup curious. And so after school, we'd all kind of gone our separate ways, and we got back together, kind of got the band back together. And we were going to start a startup, and we looked at some hardware stuff. We had good ideas about how to do better radar for like pirate ships. and how to do better Dropbox and better oh god, what was the other one? We were doing like a home phone kind of device, and there was like some currency stuff like way before the Bitcoin days, and we were looking at all this stuff. And one that was like really near and dear to our hearts was just like how painful it was to design hardware, let alone share hardware, let alone get it manufactured. And it ended up kind of bubbling up to the top.
Can you radar for pirate ships? Can we?
Okay.
Can we get into that real quick?
All right.
We're just gonna let that sit on the table. I don't know.
I want to clarify. We probably had good ideas of what we'd like to do on the marketing side of that. I'm not sure we actually had any idea how to build it.
Okay.
We had a logo picked out, a slogan. We protect your booty.
Yes, lots of booty jokes, right?
Yeah, lots of booty jokes going around.
So was this
implementation? Kind of weak.
So with these marketing meetings at the bar, is that kind of a thing?
We were a little hungover, actually.
Okay.
Still,
Okay.
We thought it was a great idea. If we knew anything about radar or flying things or pirates, we probably would have done it.
All right, but instead we got upverters. That's a decent trade. I like that.
And if your customers don't like you, they kill you.
That's right.
Yes.
Not a good business to be in, I suspect.
It's very binary,
Right.
Right? Kind of like startups generally.
Yeah.
Dying means something different.
Dying means you wipe your hands, you've lost someone else's money, and then you move on to the next idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you guys using someone else's money?
We are.
Oh, excellent.
So when we, yes, lots of it.
Tell us the backstory of this, because we're always interested in the funding of, startups like this. How long did you spend, using your own money, and then how did you come across real money, someone else's money, magic money?
So when we started Upverter, I was the degenerate addition to the team. Steve had a bit of personal money saved up, and Mike had a bit of personal money saved up, and I had a bunch of student debt. And so I was kind of the anchor in the whole money thing to start with. But my parents were pretty great about it. They put us up for free, and they loaned us a little bit of money so that I could pay my student bills and keep us alive for a little while. Stevie put in his personal money. Mikey put in his personal money, and that all lasted us about 4 months. And that was the first 4 months of the company. And I can remember sitting down and looking at the books and being like, we get 4 months. This is amazing. 4 months is so much time, right?
Zach was going to have the first version fully working and sold in 4 months.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He guaranteed it. It was profitable by then.
So Zach was the hardware guy to start with, is that right?
Yeah, I was the hardware guy. Yeah. But yeah, so we eked along for kind of our first 4 months. So we started the company in August. By November, we had our first kind of promises of angel money, and it was from friends. It was like guys that we knew that were angel investors, but that were friends of ours. And then in late December, we got into Y Combinator, and so that brought in about $20,000 in funding. So at that point, we probably had $35,000 maybe in outside money, and probably about $40,000 in personal money. So that was we were about at the break even point there.
And how long does that sort of money last? Three guys. Was it only 3 at the time?
Yeah, it was. It was just the 3 of us, and we weren't spending any money at all. We were.
It's for food,
we
pretty
were
much.
really lean. Yeah, exactly, and coffee, right?
Yeah.
Pizza and Jolt Cola. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So we, like, at that point, we probably had like 6 months worth of money if we wanted to take our time with it. But then we raised our first kind of real money, and it was from one of Yuri Milner's funds as part of what we were doing in Y Combinator, and it was another $150,000. And then at the end of YC, we did demo day, and we raised total. So like if I roll everything up at the end of Y Combinator, we had $450,000 in external money, and that was enough. Like at the time, that was enough for 12 months. Mm-hmm. Like we looked at it, we wanted to hire some people, we kind of knew what we wanted to do with the money, and it was like perfect. We got a year, and we didn't do nearly what we wanted to do in that first year. Like it took us way longer. And we got really lucky, and we brought on a little bit more money along the way, but we were able to take that 450 and use it for all 3 years of the company's life up until like 2 months ago. So all told, in June we had only raised $650,000, give or take. Mm-hmm. And that had lasted us 3 years. So we got 3 years out of $650K. And then just recently, and we haven't announced this publicly yet, but just recently we closed another big round. Yeah. We just raised another big round of money. And so it's our official seed round. So it's like officially our first venture capital money. So we've graduated from angels to VCs, and that closed in the middle of June.
Well, congratulations.
What's the difference
that's awesome.
between angels and VCs, really?
So nothing. It's the size of the checks they write.
Right.
Angels tend to be more useful. VCs tend to write bigger checks. And so it's, what do you need? Do you need people that are useful, or do you need people that write big checks?
And to VC, I assume that VCs also expect a larger return quicker than angel investors potentially.
So most of our angels, like, and we're very, very blessed with a lot of the angel investors we have. Most of these guys don't know anything about what we're trying to do. They don't know why we're trying to do it. They believe in us. They believe in the collaboration, of the collaborative economy. They believe that the world of atoms is going to look a lot like the world of bits given enough time, and that we're somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And so they get all that, and they want to help, and they like who we are, and they like the story, and and at some point 3 or 4 years ago, somebody gave them a check, and that's why they can write checks now too.
Right. Okay.
And so there's a lot of pay it forward, and there's and we look for angel investors that help us with things that we're really bad at. Mm-hmm. So like we try and bring on angel investors that have like sales skills, because we're terrible at that, and or marketing.
Someone was just insulted. I think
mixed company here, Jack.
Or I've only been at it for 3 weeks. How do you know how terrible I am?
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. But like, and then at some point you the angel investors, like, they don't really expect a return per se. Like they they want their whole portfolio to return. They're not doing it to just to dispose of money. They're doing it because they want to make more money, but they're doing it for a lot of other reasons. Mm-hmm. VCs are only doing it to make money. Right. Yeah. And that's the really big difference between the two is you're working with somebody whose job is investing versus somebody whose hobby is investing.
Got it.
Interesting. What about
Did any of you...
Go ahead,
I got in first.
You go ahead.
Did any of you have any fear of taking other people's money? See, I am the type of person who probably couldn't... Like, that would keep me awake at night, knowing that I'm burning someone else's money. That would just... I don't know. I don't think I could handle it. Did you guys have any fear? No, we'll take it. Thank you very much. Woohoo!
Oh, certainly. And the friends and family money was...
That'd be tough.
Always the most stressful, right? It's people that you know and talk with all the time. And with family, at least, they're not in the same position as the angels. You know that they don't have many millions of dollars squirreled away somewhere. They're doing this because they believe in you. I think we all had a bit of that.
Had? So you don't have it anymore?
Still do.
There's no more fear?
It's all over.
So like I think I agree. I think I agree with Steve. Like I'm we took money from friends and family, and it was a really torn decision, right? It was like you take the money because if you don't take the money, this thing's going to die, and you want this thing to live. But at the same time, you're taking money from people who you know their life will be worse if you lose that money.
Got it.
Right? Like you know that their quality of living is going down because of what you're doing in the short term and potentially in the long term. Right? And the payoff's really not that great for friends and family. Like it's non-zero, but they're not,
they're not going to become instant millionaires.
They're coming in early for small amounts of money, right? So it's like, they maybe 100x their money, but it's not going to change their world because they only put in $10,000. So, I don't know. So there's that. But like taking money from institutional investors and angel investors, not really. Like, these guys, they become your friends, like, and you want to give them a return because you like them, but it's not, I don't know. If we blew up and ran out, I think most of these guys would write us a check to do something else. Right. Like they still, like they believe in us. They know that we're not, they know that we're not taking it to the casino or like something like that. Right. They, So it's, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at on it. Mikey, what do you think?
I certainly had, I guess I still do a little bit. It's less now than I used to. I think it's one of the things that drives us a lot, though. It's that you're playing with other people's money. There's responsibility with that. I think it's made us work really hard.
But that's a decision. Oh, sorry, that's a decision you've got to make up front when you do something like this that doesn't have an immediate profit return. So you can't bootstrap yourself. There's this is a non-bootstrappable kind of business you guys are in, or was in, kind of, for the first. I mean,
the amount of time it takes to build something like this, and we've been working at it full time. And so you would never, eventually you will get to something. The problem is somebody's going to beat you to it if you're not full time on it. And
it's even more than full time, right? Because you got to like over invest. We've been like our sales are effectively zero. It's been 3 years and we've been an average of 7 people, right? So like run that payroll. Yeah. And and you're at $1 million paid up front for a thing that doesn't make any money. Yep. Which is like and you just, so we could never invest $1 million of personal wealth in this kind of thing. Like none of us had any money. But so like it is the kind of thing that needs to be like it is venture capital in the sense of it is an exploratory venture, right? Like it is, nobody knows if this is going to make money, but we're going to put money down because if it does, it's probably going to make lots of money.
Right.
Well, that seems like it makes if you guys decided you wanted to do it anyways, then that's makes the decision to take money easier then, right? It's like, well, we do it or we take it, we don't. Let's just go.
I guess it comes down to the mindset of the person as well, because I'm a bootstrap kind of guy. I've always, ever since I was a teenager doing kits, I've always gone, okay, I can put my own money in to build 10 kits and I sell those 10 kits, I make a profit, I use that profit to bootstrap, the rest of the business kind of thing. It's just something that I'm more a risk averse kind of person. I like to see that immediate result, that immediate, things are happening, great, I'm making money in the first month.
Yeah. And it's good feedback too. It lets you tune what you're doing. Course.
This is more system based, it seems though as well. You need a lot of the things to be right before people will buy into it, right? I mean, like if I have a CAD tool and it's like only the silkscreen part of it works, it's like, well, okay. It's interesting, but I'm not paying for this yet.
It's tits on a bull, yeah.
Exactly. It's like, all right, well, yeah. So I can see that as well, the system side of it. I wanted to ask, though, about the... so you guys are working on a hardware-centric company, right? Designing hardware in, CAD tool. But you were at a startup accelerator thingy. The Y Combinator guys are all software. Was that like being strangers in a strange land? Or, obviously you were as Canadians anyways, but...
So actually, the Canadian thing's interesting. It's about 10% of YC. So
really?
It's about
cool.
right. Yeah, it's about right. Waterloo, actually, interesting enough, is one of the most represented universities in YC. Yeah. It's pretty high on the list. But so like that wasn't bad. Like in our class alone, there were I don't know, half a dozen Canadians maybe, including us. So like another 3 or 4 guys. But in terms of like we build software. That is what we do all day. Like our engineering team writes code. And it's code for building hardware, but like we're as much a software company as anybody else that was going through YC. That being said, like we went through YC at the same time as the Pebble guys. So like, the very real hardware company in YC at the same time as us. And there's been a ton of hardware companies since then. They're really trying to get better at helping hardware companies. PG has that mindset. So, really not bad. And the advice is kind of the same, right? Build something that people want, find a way to distribute it, find a way to market it, sell it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's software or hardware. It's kind of the same.
Now, with Y Combinator, do they get you to move to Silicon Valley for a while, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys do that?
Yeah, we were there for 6 months. Yeah, right. We were in Mountain View for 6 months.
Why is that? They want to closely track what you're doing, or they think it's important for your enrichment, or what?
I would certainly think it's closer to the enrichment. I mean, there was a huge sense of community. I completely understand now how important it was to be there, and just be at the dinners every week. I mean, we showed up, and if you didn't have something new and shiny to show, you were embarrassed because everyone else had done something cool, and you got to talk with some amazing people. And so
you got to talk through your problems with people as well. And it was nice to be in a situation that other people had the same problems as you. So that it was kind of nice because it can be isolating. Working on your own through some of these problems can be quite daunting. And if you don't have somebody else going, oh, yeah, well, we don't have any users either. And, oh, yeah, things are breaking for us too. It helps soften some of those pieces.
Yeah, it's just, I guess, understanding that other people are going through the same thing and being able to walk in and talk to the YC guys in person and just go for a walk and chat about what's going on was incredibly helpful.
So you guys are at YC. You're, you got all spun up and everything. What about when you started taking it out into the world? I mean, so what was the initial response? I mean, how have you seen it since, and where do you guys see it going in the future?
Yeah, sure. So when we first took it to the world was about 6 months after YC, and maybe a little less, 4 months after YC. It was a fall of 2011, and like all naive founders, we thought that it was perfect. We thought we had done everything that we needed to do, and it was all done. And we were gonna launch it, and then go to the Caribbean and just wait for the paychecks, right?
Right.
Mai Tais everywhere.
And it was like, and I look back on it, and I can hear the excuses that like we were telling each other about how done it was and how perfect it was, and I can remember like all the things that didn't matter that are like the most important things in the world right now, and it just. So, like really nice, like good learning experience for us and all of that kind of stuff. But the general response was amazing. Like it was great for like a super half-baked product, that was doing an interesting thing, but not doing it very well. The response was great. We got a ton of interest. Everybody thought, what we were working on was really important, and that was good. And then usage was zero. Right. So like everybody sign up or show up or like poke around at and say, oh, this is awesome. If only I needed something like this, or this is awesome. If only it worked.
But if only it was fully formed, as Chris said before, right? If it's not 100%, people expect, and because an EDA tool is so critical, they expect it to
Dave,
work 100%
you know all about this, right?
Everything.
You used to talk about when you had to use half-baked Altium stuff as well. Just as development versions, it's tough to use, right? It's because you expect certain. Like if I had picked up a hammer and the head of the hammer's missing, it's like this thing. I'm not using this, right? It's like that's just what you expect from your tools. You need your tools to be finished in order to use them properly.
Yeah, and that was what it was. Like we ran into that brick wall, and. For a bunch of reasons, that was really great for us. We knew, we knew what we had to do, but we also knew that it was a really, really long way away. Like that was kind of the reality check of how far we are. We looked at the bank balance, and we had about a third as much money as we needed to get to what we thought it was going to take.
Ouch.
And that was without even baking in the fact that we were probably going to be way late on how long it was going to take us. And so I can remember Steve, Mike, and I, like we had kind of a really sobering chat in November-ish of 2011, and we sat down and it was like, okay, what do we do, right? Because like we got, I don't know, at that time we had maybe $100,000 or $200,000 in the bank, and it was like, so we can get 4 or 5 months out of this money, and it's probably going to take us 8.
Should we go to Vegas? Should we?
Yeah. And it was like, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to be like, do we port? Do we pivot? Do we become like a social gaming email bullshit startup like everybody else in the world?
Oh man, you went there.
Or do we? Well, like, and we had the real, do we call up all of our investors and ask for more money? Do we fold it up, like give the money back and like start over, do something new? And we decided that the right move was for us to start working on layout and start working on simulation and start working on some of these things that we didn't have that we knew we needed, and that we would figure it out.
I can tell you now that you didn't need to do simulation.
I knew Dave was going to go there.
PCB and schematic, and yep, I wouldn't have spent a second on simulation. But hey, that's just me.
Dave doesn't spend a second on simulation anyways, so.
Oh, well, I do, but it's not an essential part of a functioning EDA tool, in my opinion, anyway. Especially not at this level,
I think I'd agree with you, Dave, on that one. We didn't know at that time, and we actually, and simulation's a funny one for us. One of the ways that we patched it, one of the ways that we made it work, and found the money to keep us alive was actually through a contract. So the reason that we have simulation is that for a couple of semiconductor companies, we built a simulator. And it had all the same properties as Upverter. It was in the cloud, it was collaborative, it was multiplayer, it was well distributed, all that kind of stuff, accessible over an API, but it was a simulator that ran in the cloud. And that brought in, I don't know, maybe $30,000 worth of revenue, that contract, and that kept us alive. It bought us like a month.
Fair enough.
It was kind of one of those amazing blessings. And it's still, like, our simulation is still really half-baked, but it kept the company alive.
Okay, fair call.
I want to defend simulation a little bit because
okay, here we go.
As its father.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a little button in our tool which everyone thinks is simulation, but it's not. That's like a one-day add-on to our simulation engine, and it doesn't work very well. And I apologize. I'm sorry. But then behind that, if you give us like a spice file, there's a really, really cool back end to it. That if we ever get around to building like an automated front end into the tool, it will be amazing.
Got it. So you have to know how to use it. It's not, you have to plug in that spice data into the back end manually to make it.
Yes, yeah.
Do
you
as
have to
claimed.
give us the net list.
Right.
We don't generate the net. So the weakness is the net list generation is terrible, and model generation is terrible for us.
Yeah, it's always tough with that kind of stuff in simulations anyways. Actually associating, like I know EVA pulls in like LT Spice stuff, but then you have to still input all, like it doesn't actually, I don't think it actually does any associations between the part type and the actual CAD or Spice file, or I don't know.
So I dream to solve that problem one day. I want you to put every analog chip down, and then we'll start talking about mixed signal, but every analog chip down and press simulate, and it actually simulate what you want.
I wanted to do that, and then I wanted to actually simulate accurately and easily.
There's companies like Altium that can't do it, okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Their simulation tool sucks.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the thing. It's easy to strap a Spice engine on there, right? I mean, like Spice has been around a long time, right? It's all text-based and
it's an open source engine.
And that's easy to bolt on there. But then the actual interfacing and doing it right, that's the tough part. But I think that some of the stuff you guys are doing right kind of does feed into that well, like the like bill of materials stuff. I mean, so the actual association between what you're seeing on the page and then real stuff, right? Like a real, actual, unique part number. That's a difficult thing to do, and that's what I actually like about your tool is the ability to link that up on the back end to actually have these. If I'm looking at an LM324, it's not just a generic one. It's actually the one from TI that is a dip part, right? I mean, like, it's the actual part number, and that kind of tied together.
And that's the killer feature, right? In any modern EDA tool, that's where they're all going, and they know it. That is the modern killer app for EDA is all that back end.
The next step to that one that I'd really like, and that I certainly know we're working on, is you put down the TI dip LM, 555, 324, whatever it is. Pick your chip, and then we can go and be like, well, the TI one's not orderable from where you're ordering the rest of your parts. But here are 10 equivalent parts from whoever else is making one. Would you like to order one of those instead?
Nope.
And are you guys sucking? Are you guys sucking this data automatically? Do you have agreements with the likes of DigiKey and Mouser and Element 14 and all those to suck in all this data? Or are you just sneaking behind the scenes as what used to happen?
It's a little bit of both. We work very closely with Octopart, who's also a Y Combinator company, and they, we beat them up as much as I think everybody else does for the data that they have and the quality of it. But it's kind of the best publicly available API data that's out there, and they're working to make it a lot better, and that's a really good thing for both them and us. But we also work with DigiKey and Arrow and Newark and Mouser to get data more directly from distributors. And then we're also working with the semiconductor guys. So we're working with TI and Freescale and a couple other big semiconductor guys to get data directly from them. So it's
as in pull data sheets directly.
So more than data sheets. So so not just the data sheets, models. But you got it. The symbols, the footprints, the simulation models. Give us the stuff that you used to generate the data sheet, so that we can put it into our open source database, let people collaborate on top of it, and let people use it much more than anything else. So
cool.
So we're kind of hitting it. We're hitting it from all angles, and it's a messy problem, and it's like a legitimate big data problem. Like you're talking about, millions and millions of parts with sometimes tens, sometimes hundreds, sometimes even thousands of attributes. And some of those attributes are like a data sheet or a spice model or a footprint, and they're not simple attributes, right? So so it's a really big messy problem. And then you want to deduplicate all that data, and you want to be able to do recommendations and alternates and all that kind of stuff. You want to have pricing information, and you want that to be real time. And it's it's a data management nightmare. And
what I want is everyone to have the same format of data sheet.
So do we.
Zach laughs at me every single time I say this, but it would be amazing.
It would be amazing. I agree.
If that's the way it was.
So
how's it going for you guys so far? hey, Texas Instruments. Hey, Intel. Let me tell you what you guys are doing wrong.
I think you should have stuck with the pirate ship stuff.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier.
Further, that's our job, is to tell these chip companies what they're doing wrong, and then they ignore us. You guys don't have to do this. It's fine.
I don't lead, but I think you should all have the same data sheet.
Someday.
Or I do, and they all say, they should all use our format.
Someday it would be. So one of the dreams, and it's probably pretty far out, but one of the dreams is if you can build enough inertia just in both people and data and designs and all that kind of stuff. If you can have a place with enough inertia, and it's both data and human inertia, at some point those guys have to enter their data into Upverter instead of publishing PDF data sheets. And so if the total flank, right, if the total guerrilla warfare run around flank of Upverter is better data sheets, if that's all we accomplish, right, is that data is a little bit more open and a little bit more public and a little bit easier to get and not in a stupid PDF, then I think we've done a really good thing.
And it's someone else's money well spent.
Yes.
See, I think that's a very good call. The data stuff is very important, and I'd be surprised if we don't actually start seeing that at these big companies, of having people that are just kind of like the external data coordinator kind of thing, right? I mean, we see this like I mentioned, TI and Intel, right? Some of the biggest chip makers out there. I mean, they're all moving into open source, right? Intel just started the Minnow board. TI has been doing the BeagleBone and a couple others, and so I imagine that they see it's in their best interest. So I'm surprised that we don't actually hear about that yet, but maybe it is there behind the scenes, and it's just kind of a latent thing, you know?
So it is a little bit. It is a little bit. A couple of these guys have actually gone and figured out where the data came from in the first place and put it into some database inside of the company. And we've gotten onto a couple of calls lately that have been like super refreshing, right? It's like we get onto a call with a semiconductor manufacturer and they say, yeah, let me just dump the database and I'll email it over and you'll have everything you need. And it's like, what? I'm sorry, what?
Just everything I wanted? That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, right? So it's happening. But like of the 500 semiconductor manufacturers that matter and the like 25 that like really, really matter, you know, this is like 10%, right? It's like two or three of them. So it's really early days.
Yeah. Well, keep fighting the good fights. We'll be sitting over here drinking lemonade and lobbing
now
the
big question is, how do you shake the stigma of being a web-based EDA tool?
Speaking of things we lob your way,
yes.
Since the
there's
inception.
the hand grenade. It goes in because, well, yeah, quite frankly, you know, professional engineers like Chris, like Chris is more into it now, but, you know, we are very wary of web-based being tied to the web. We just, you know, have this innate fear.
You know what it is? It's actually, it's just, everybody wants to make their boss happy, right? That's what it really comes down to. That's like what, I forget who's talking about that. But everybody wants to make their boss.
I've never given a shit about my boss.
Whatever. You're an outlier. But everybody wants to make their boss happy, right? That's where your raise comes from. If I go to my boss,
ass.
I know, and I say, look, this CAD tool is really great. I really want to use it. And then 2 months down the line, you know, our internet breaks or my computer, you know, something's wrong where I can't access it. Yeah. It's not like that doesn't happen with CAD programs on my own computer, but it just is that stigma, like Dave said. I mean, it's you know, it's I can't go to my boss and put my neck on the line for something that's so important. And so like, how do you get over that?
Sorry, may I quickly add in there that you'd be surprised, a lot of engineering companies still do not allow internet on the desktop. I am not kidding.
Yes.
You know, there are.
Wow. Really?
So I've got the very like polished, I tell it to PRE type of bullshit people all day answer to this, and I'll give you that. But like Mikey,
thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Mikey spends most of his day on the phone with engineers fighting with this problem. So like you know, Mikey, you should chime in here with your answer. But like my 2 points on this, like really quick, are like one, at some point it becomes more important to be able to collaborate and to be able to move faster and to be able to work with all of the other people in the ecosystem. And this happened in software a little bit, and it took a long time. Like there was a really long time where the right way to do software was like solid files, you know, on your desktop. You know, you maybe share them with your co-founder over like an NAS or an NFS share or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we've moved to the world where it's way more important to use an open source library or, you know, something that's that a whole lot of people have looked at and then glue it together and do that very collaboratively with your coworkers, even if that means doing it on the internet. You know, and I think there's a very good parallels between the value of software IP and the value of hardware IP. There are some pieces of hardware that are probably worth more than some pieces of software and vice versa. But, so like there's that chunk of it too. But then there's also just the general transition towards the cloud and the fact that we've got a ton of people that spend every day trying to make sure that your files don't get broken into versus like how many guys at your workplace or on, you know, at home on your personal desktop computer are worried about the security of that computer. And like, you know, like it's very, very bad for us if somebody gets somebody else's data inside of Upverter versus very, very bad for you. right? So it's just like we worry and, you know, care a lot about this problem, and, you know, we encrypt and we compress and we use AWS, and like we're in all of the right places to try and address this. But that's the very like polished answer. That's like the what we try to do corporately. But like Mikey, you talk to engineers all the time. What do you tell them?
So, wow. What do I actually tell them, or what are we going to tell them for this podcast?
Well, save some time here, man. Yeah, I mean, if someone listens to the show, they might call. So, yeah.
so look, in most workplaces, somewhere along the line, you're using a SaaS system of some kind, whether it's your contacts or your, you know, repo for your code, or there are some that are completely locked down, but as it turns out, there aren't that many. And electrical engineering is a little bit behind. But what we're like, as Zach said, so I go into we have a team of people and his polished one. But the reality is that the internet's, you know, going to be, you know, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's going to be big one of these days, guys.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
So the story I like to tell people, and this actually has very little to do with security and the web, but I was talking to a guy, I forget what his name was, and he came into the office and he was talking, and he was at a hackathon that we sponsored, I think, and he hadn't heard of us before, and he was using Eagle, and his friend showed up and he said, "Look, guys, you got to try this Upverter thing." And he's like, "No, I'm in hacking mode." And his friend's like, "No, believe me, you got to try this Upverter thing." And so he went online, and he came to Toronto to come to the office to say hi after using it. And he came up to me, and he's like, "You know, we're doing this hackathon." And I sat down, and I'm like, "This is going to take me 4 or 5 hours to do." Sat down and did the schematic in 10 minutes. And like, as things go, that's pretty awesome. And he was obviously doing something reasonably short. Like, you're not talking an 18-month project, right?
Yeah.
This is a hackathon. But people need to try it out. And people are and really busy trying to say, look, we can't do it because it's on the web, and you're trying to make excuses. But if you go to your boss and say, look, it's going to take me 1/10 of the time to build this and get it to market, I can assure you that they'll be talking really hard and thinking really hard about whether they're going to do that, because the amount of money it costs to have it to employ your engineering team is huge.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sure.
that's a really good point. So what about the back end of that then, though? So I think this is the point that we've always gotten to, is you guys have this very strong policy about, that your data is yours, and you're very open about that kind of stuff. But more the, even if it is 10 minutes or 10 days that I put into a project, if I have it in KiCad, like I use, right, I know that in 2 weeks' time I can go open it up and it's still there, right? Whereas, if you guys shut down or yada yada yada,
Sure.
it's
think that the pirate thing's a better idea and head in that direction.
Yeah, that would be. I might.
Then the whole thing implodes, and everyone's lost their data.
Yeah, so I can talk to that just a little bit. So when we went through Y Combinator, one of our advisors, and so the way YC works is they set you up with people who have gone through before, an advisory group, people that you can call on, people that can help you. And we were very, very, very fortunate to get set up with Adam Wiggins from Heroku. And so when we launched the site, there was an initial very positive, but then there was like this 10% who were really passionate about the problem and passionate about the space and liked what we were working on, but were really concerned about the bump in the night factor, right? Which is that we just disappear, or that we fuck up something and we lose all the data on our servers, or like all of that, right? And who owns the data, right? So they're going to enter all of this IP into this system. Like, who owns that? Like, are we going to take it and go and sell it in China, like, at bottom dollar? Or are we going to, are we going to try and honor the value that people have put into that? And so I called up Adam And I said, Adam, what do I do? You must have had the same problem with Heroku when you guys launched. And he's like, we made a page. And so Heroku has a page of their promises to developers. And we lifted it like verbatim. And I'm like, I'm stealing it.
Nice.
Like I'm taking it. And so we stole the page verbatim and we posted it. And it's like, I think it's our promise. I think it's like upverter.com/our promise. And we meant every word. And I called up the lawyers and I said, like, look, I'm posting this page and I need you to update the terms of service so that this page is valid. Like I need, I don't want a world where, people are using the product, they're bound to the terms of service, and then we've got this nice fluffy page which helps us sell shit, but actually doesn't mean anything. So
the lawyers were not happy with that. I think we got a visit from ours. I think he came into the office and was like, "Really?"
Yeah. We fixed the terms of service, and and then when Dropbox went through their whole debacle, and we updated it again too when that happened, and GitHub went through a thing, and we updated it again when that happened. So like we've been really, really kind of responsive to all of this stuff happening in the ecosystem. But like on the topic of where Mike, Steve, and I stand on this, where the company stands on it, where our investors stand on it, we don't view it as IP that we necessarily own. We're a transit mechanism, right? It's IP that flows through us. It allows people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. But like we don't ever like sum up the value of the library or sum up the value of the repository. And it's like, yeah, cool. Let's go see how much we can get for this in like China. It's not ever really thought of like that. It's not really an asset that we think of as portable. Like it only has value inside of Upverter, and outside of that, it's just dead data. So there's that side of it, but then there's the like, what happens if we go bump in the night factor? And Steve can talk about this. We've built a ton of systems just to make sure that never happens. We've tested them. We've gone bump in the night a couple of times, and I don't think we've ever lost anything. So it has happened.
Not ever. I'm sure you meant not ever, right, guys?
Right. And so there's that, but then there's also the fact that like we've forward paid on our servers for a long time, and and we have open formats and people can go download stuff. And like if you ever if you're ever worried, download your data. It comes in an open source file format. It's super documented. You can take that and turn it into anything. We also have an open source project on GitHub that will turn it into the formats that we're able to. And we're half of our engineering team right now is working on taking more formats and turning them into Upverter, and vice versa. Taking more Upverter and turning it into other people's formats. So like it's a really important thing for us.
Well, that's good. I like that. That's a good answer.
Yeah, and so I mean to on the kinds of things that Zach said about the data. To us, we think that it only has a whole lot of value in Upverter. It's not worth it for us to try and trap things in Upverter. Electrical engineering involves a lot of tools, and we do have to play with other things. And if we're not the right place for the work to happen, it totally makes sense for us to find ways for you to be able to get what is your data and get it in a way that you can work with it. There are a lot of tools that, as part of the import-export stuff that we're doing right now, are incredibly hard to work with to try and actually get the things that you've put into it back out. And that's not something that we want to do. If it makes more sense for you to go and work on a tool on your desktop, then go for it.
Because that's one of the fears of engineers with their EDA tools as well. You start with some simple designs and you're using Upverter and everything's working great. And then a design comes along that's a showstopper which Upverter just cannot handle.
I'm still waiting for that for KiCad, to be honest.
Right, yeah, exactly. Because you need this, you need this 12-layer board with controlled impedance, blah, 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 or you need, there's really something that the tool just can't handle, or you find that, nobody's tested it to the extreme limits before in terms of number of components and layers and complexity and all that sort of jazz. And that's the other fear. I mean, how do you handle that? What are your, what's the biggest design, for example? Like I don't see anything on your website that shows you what the biggest design that somebody's worked on. Look, hey, you can do a 12-layer board in Upverter, and you can do this and that, and with 10,000 parts.
It's a little unfortunate that the biggest designs and the most impressive designs are private. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's stuff that we'd very much like to show off. But
Sounds like it's time for a design contest, guys.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. It might
Killer
be.
prizes.
So
The most complicated design wins.
Yeah.
So like Stevie said, there's a lot of pretty cool stuff in there that's private. Like we're working with a couple of really big companies nowadays that have like hundreds or thousands of engineers. And so, like I'll just float that out there as you can imagine the complexity. If you got 1,000 engineers, some of it's probably pretty complex.
So you've got big companies like that using Upverter.
We do, and that's a
Really?
very recent development. That's in the last
I'm
couple
going to
months.
say I'm very surprised.
But that's
because
That's good.
because this comes down to where do you see your target market? Do you seriously think that you can win, be the tool at huge companies and actually replace the likes of Altium and Cadence and all that sort of stuff? Or do you go, well, we know that's not realistic, so we're not going to even bother aiming for that?
So like the very arrogant answer to that question is our target market is engineers. And they come in all shapes and sizes.
Arrogant on top.
Back to the practical world, please.
They come in all shapes and sizes, and some of them are in the basement, and some of them are in big enterprises, and a lot of them are in SMBs. We know that for the target market of engineers, we do collaboration, reuse, sharing, consumption, all of those words that we associate with our product. We do it better than anybody else by like orders of magnitude. And so, there's a data library collaboration kind of thing that we're very, very good at. Interoperability is a thing that we're historically been very bad at, and we're trying to get good at. And complexity is a thing that we've been very bad at historically, and we're trying to get a little bit better at, but it's lower on the priority list. So in terms of how we view our market, we want to be the collaboration tool for all engineers, right? Like we want to be that for everybody. Like I don't care if the tool that you boot up on your desktop when you get into work is Altium or Cadence or something really crazy and esoteric that like only you use. I don't care. What I want to be for those users is collaboration. I want to be reuse. I want to be a data repository. I want to be where they work with other people. And that, if that's all we were for all of those guys, then great. We've done our job. For a lot of those users, we're also going to be the design tool that they use, but that's not a requirement. Like it was like Steve was saying, like it's like tools, right? Like we don't want to sell the hammer that lets you do everything. Like that's not the goal, right? Like we're gonna sell you a hammer. It's gonna do a lot of things, but like every once in a while, you're gonna need a screwdriver, and you should go use a screwdriver. Like I don't really want people trying to use the hammer to do things that a screwdriver is really good at. But like our equivalent of the screwdriver, the thing that we're really really good at, which is really really special focused, is collaboration. So like that's like our big one that we care a lot about.
Can you use your collaboration technology separate from your tool? So say if you're an Altium user, can they come to Upverter and go, right, I don't give a toss about your CAD and I don't give a toss about your PCB and schematic and simulator. All I want is your collaboration stuff. Can you plug that in
and so to Altium? The answer today is kind of. The answer that we're working towards is yes. So,
because I can see your future potentially being much bigger there than the tool itself, than the PCB and schematic tool itself.
Yes.
I think,
like GitHub is, right?
It wouldn't surprise me at all if in 5 years' time we find Upverter no longer even bothers offering a PCB and schematic tool, or they just do for hobbyists or something like that. It's a central hub for...
So review is where we're starting on that right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's an easier problem than some of the edits and allowing two people to sync directly together, but we're building in that direction.
Okay.
And I love the review tool. Like honestly, when that came out, that was the turning point for me. That's when I was like, okay, I really need to give this a look. Obviously me and Dave may have said, web-based tool, yada yada yada. I'm sure you could go back in our archives and hear
it
one or
was
two.
just a web-based tool,
right? And it was. But honestly,
please,
the design review tool that is a problem that was begging to be solved, and you guys are very well on the way to solving it, I think, and that is very impressive. More so than the other like CAD or web-based, like the schematic only tools. When they were just doing that kind of stuff in the browser, it's like, okay, yeah, I like that, but I don't want to have to operate between the two. Right. So that's kind of like moving to what Dave's saying as well.
Can you explain this review tool? Because I haven't used Upvert apart from just a quick play when we used it, when we talked about it way back. Can you guys explain this verification?
Absolutely.
Stevie, get in on this. Steve built it.
Oh, there you go.
Sure. So the where we're coming at from that, we do code review internally for all of our software stuff. Every line of code that gets written gets reviewed because it's easy to make mistakes. And hardware review happens as well. And the experience that we're used to going through that is that somebody prints out a PDF and passes it around, and everybody gets their highlighter out and goes and highlights up the documents. Then you get in a conference room somewhere and try and merge all of the highlights together, and then you give that one piece of paper to the designer and have him re-enter all of it, and you repeat this process a couple of times, and it's so frustrating that you've got these computerized tools and you have very powerful computers and you just can't use them for the review portion of it. So the design review portions that we have, it's ideally suited for the web. It's someplace that multiple people can work on the single canonical review. You don't have that merge step. Everybody can see what's going on. And then even being able to see what's changed revision to revision is quite easy there too. So you can start with a design in Upverter, or you can import designs from other places.
That was going to be my question. Can I import my Altium project in there and just use your verification?
Absolutely.
Your tool. Ooh,
absolutely. Okay.
Because I was going to say, there is a separate startup right there, just in that.
Fucking sales guys. So yes, just further to that point, Dave, the number of separate startups that we've stumbled across building Upverter, like the number of different startups that we should be instead of just being one, is insane. It's insane. But
it's endless, huh?
Oh god! So Adam, and I talked about Adam earlier, but like when we sat down with Adam, I don't know, we were like a week or two into YC. It was really early, but we sat down with Adam, and Adam's like, it's really good to have a fertile ecosystem to be building in. Like, it's really good to have a fertile problem space, but you got to pick one. And it's kind of been our perpetual problem of being in a world where so much is broken and having good ideas for how to fix it all, but just not like, if I had 100 times as many people, like we would still not be able to fix it all. So it's a big broken space, but yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. It could be a problem all unto itself.
Cool. Glad to know I'm not alone in that thinking.
So what about the? So you get through the design review, and like I said, that's one of my favorite things about this. What about the back end? Or I noticed actually since the last time I was when we did the review to get, or that activity tracker. That session, online design session thing, I didn't notice actually the ordering side of things where you can actually, is it like one-click order now as well, or what is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with partners to do PCB manufacturing, and we hook up with DigiKey to do BOM ordering. So, like, you press order, and we'll have it shipped to you, and we have this, like, neat slider. And it took us a long time to figure this out and confuses everyone. So it is, like, my favorite feature that no one can figure out.
Oh, it's the worst.
It is the best and the worst. But there's, like, a long time versus, like, I want it as soon as possible. and the amount of money you pay is depending on how quickly you want it, essentially.
Yeah, so
okay.
so for most circuit board manufacturing, the defining characteristic is actually like turnaround time, and not the complexity of the board or what geography it gets made in or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, or even the number of holes or layers or anything. It's just how quick do you want it. Like if you want it tomorrow, it's going to cost a lot of money. If you want it in a week, it's going to be mediocrely priced. If you don't care when it shows up, like it's going to be cheap. But like that's it. You can get a crazy, crazy complex board in 2 months for almost no money. And so it's and what Mike's talking about was our attempt at allowing users to tell us whether or not they were price sensitive or time sensitive. And that's it. And so we gave them a slider, and it's the slider of like, how much do you look like a business or how much do you look like a guy in your basement?
Right. Yeah, and so if people can't see this too, it's at so you go down, find a finished project, because I actually don't have any finished projects, but if you go to the bottom of the bill of materials, like scroll over to the bottom, then there's an order button there.
Yep.
So that's,
and it works really well. For the users that have used it, it's still in early days of deployment, that feature, but we place. So whenever you place an order, we place between 1 and 3 orders with manufacturers, assemblers, and suppliers, and we get everything drop shipped to the right places. If it needs to get assembled, everything goes to an assembler and they assemble it. If it doesn't, then you just get 2 boxes in the mail, right? You get a box with PCBs and you get a box with parts, and that's all it does.
Huh. And then I see you guys also offer, this is interesting too, because you offer design verification, parts verification, and then, like you said, assembly, but then also you offer routing as like PCB layout as well, right?
Yeah. So that was an experiment that we're continuing to run, and it was an experiment into whether or not people wanted to just do a schematic and then pay to have a board that was laid out delivered. So what would you pay to have a board auto-routed if you knew that the router was not a computer but a person? So
that
this
is an
just,
interesting experiment.
Yeah, so it's slow auto-routing. We work with Double E's in India to do the routing, and so you pay for auto-routing, and they route the board for you, and they're as good as a mediocre Double E would be. So if you're less than or equal to that, right? It saves you time, right? If you're better than that, maybe you want to check the board before it goes to manufacturing. It depends on how hard it is, but that's it. And it was an experiment. We've had very, very, very few users use it.
Yeah. So let me ask you about this then. So with a offering that kind of layout service like that, who is your target audience? I mean, are you looking to get software people? Is that kind of you're looking for software people that are interested in hardware, or are you actually looking for
a big question we were trying to answer with that feature was, do we need to build an auto router?
No.
And
no.
Dave,
the answer's always no.
Right.
Don't waste it. No.
Right.
Rock solid.
You know what the problem with that
first.
is? It's a software engineer's wet dream to build an auto router, right? It's just like a math.
Friends auto route.
Exactly.
That's right. There's a good T-shirt right there.
Yep. But that was one of the things that we were trying to answer, and then another one is so it's funny, the market of hardware has had a new entrant recently, which is people who know nothing about hardware, who can't work on a PCB, but who know at least what chips they want, right? They know what kind of functionality they want a board to have. They can probably hook up a schematic, but then they're super lost for the rest of the process. And so part of it was to see if Upverter was a good tool for that audience. Like our schematic tool is much, much more sophisticated than our layout tool. Our schematic tool competes with anybody's. Our layout tool still has some work to be done on it. Could we replace our layout tool with a button and a place to enter your credit card number? Like that was really the big test on it.
Right. And the result?
And the result has been minimal usage. Like the result has been not a lot of people are looking for that service, or at least, sorry, I should qualify that. Not a lot of people who know what Upverter is and have invested time in using Upverter want that feature. So
it may not be a definitive
it might not be.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we've also got it hidden away a little ways.
Yeah,
'Cause
to get to the
you do
order
have
part,
to press
right?
the order button, and most of the time people don't find out about it until after they've ordered their first board.
Yes.
So you guys don't go around advertising the fact that, hey, if you know jack all about a PCB, then we're the tool for you.
Yeah, it's bad
Great
marketing,
advertising.
right?
So it
Know nothing CAD company.
it's actually
Ink.
it's amazing, and I will jump in on that. So like, because of how we started and because of how we got to where we are today, one of the biggest things that we fight against with our marketing nowadays is the fact that we're associated with being a hobbyist tool. And we're associated with being a hobbyist tool
Right.
because we launched the tool like a year after we started the company. And it, it wasn't because we wanted to be a hobbyist tool. It wasn't because like that was the market that we set our sights on when we started the company. It was none of those things. It was that we launched the company and it was a year old, and it was Steve, Mike, and I in a basement for most of that time, right? So it looked like a hobbyist tool. It looked like three guys in a basement built it.
Well, and it was free. I mean,
And it was free.
nothing against that, right? I mean, like, but it was free, and that draws in a certain crowd.
It does, and so it's funny. So it's one of these marketing things that we contend with, that we're trying to change the paradigm around design. We're trying to make it easier. But if you go telling the world that like you got this crazy easy engineering tool, like no engineer that thinks he's serious wants to use it, right? It's like, I don't want easy. I want the hardest fucking tool in the world, right? Because I'm badass and I'm an engineer, and that's what I am. And it's just so we tell people we have a better way, and they're like, no, I want a harder way, right? I want to be more intense.
This explains why you wanted to do it in C.
Right?
Really?
Yeah, right.
But it's so it's a problem, and it's a thing we run into a lot on our marketing.
Yeah.
Your competition wouldn't help in that respect because,
No.
correct me if I'm wrong, but every web-based
Yes.
CAD tool, and there's a lot out there, be they schematic only or, there's just like in the last 2 years, they've just exploded.
Yep.
Looks like every man and his dog's doing a CAD web-based tool startup. And they're all, hobbyist level. They're all, so that's the association. Oh, it's a web CAD tool.
Yes.
It must be for hobbyists.
Oh yeah, I came up with a acronym for that actually. I forget what
What's that?
I forget what it was. I think it was like yet another browser-based.
Yes.
Where is it? Yet another schematic tool on the web. YASTOTW. It rolls off the tongue.
It's it's a big problem. Is that we're associated with a market which is generally pretty Mickey Mouse, right? It's a lot of obvious stuff.
Yep.
It's not you can't do anything real, right? It's a toy. And like most of our competitors, that's their tagline, right? Their tagline is "It's not a toy," and it's like well, but it is. So it's it is a big problem, and it's the problem with tools. So like you build a new tool for almost any market, and because of the development path, you're going to be seen as a toy for a really long time. And so that's a problem. But it's also it's the platform shift to the web. Like nothing real happens on the web, right? Like we're only just entering the part of the internet where actual real work gets done on the internet. So like that, that's a big, like how long has it taken Google Docs, right? So like Google Docs versus Word, that's been like a 10-year battle. So like, and now, at Upverter, I think we probably use Google Docs 90% of the time, but like that took a really long time, right? Like that was
same here.
So there's a lot of stigma around web-based stuff and just that general development pattern, and it doesn't help that we have 25 competitors that I track, and I track them on a regular basis, and it used to be 2. Right? Like it was, we started the company 3 years ago and it was 0. And, about 18 months later, it was 2. and then in the last 18 months, it's gone to 25. And
wow.
And so there's a ton of energy, there's a ton of investment, there's a ton of people, there's a ton of stuff going on, but like it's probably still 3 years away from a real market, right? And that's the
I would think so at least.
And that's the really optimistic view. So, so it's a problem, and they hurt us as much as they help us. Right? They make it a market that people are aware of, but they associate it with, with the stuff that, academics are building.
It doesn't help the fact that they're like all entirely free tools as well. So you guys, to essentially compete, have to have that free model. And by doing that, that sort of drags your brand down to their level.
So I like the fact that we have it so that hobbyists can use it for free for open source hardware. Like that's a personal, like, I wish I had this tool when I was doing things. Like, I was building hardware, I wanted this tool. And I couldn't afford to buy it at that time.
Which is why we do it, right? That's Steve, Mike, and I. Like, we wanted to build like radar for pirate ships, right?
It's not going to design itself, right, guys?
We're hardware nerds. And there was no way that we wanted to do that and pay money to somebody, especially if it was going to be like an open source public community kind of thing, right? We understand that people build IP that they value and they want to keep private, and that's why we charge them money. But we also really understand that the only way the world gets better is through open source. And so anything we can do to encourage that to happen is amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
and that's where you've drawn the line. You've differentiated your free product from your paid professional product in terms of, one is you can only do open stuff on the free tool, and the professional tool is you can do all your much private stuff as you want.
And so it's the same tool, right? So the tool's the same in both cases. We don't limit you in terms of features or complexity or anything else. Like if you want to build like a super badass server in your basement and you're willing to open source that with the world, like, power to you. We will help you. We will do everything we can to empower you, and we won't charge you a dime. But if you're going to do that and you're going to keep it private from the rest of the community, we're going to charge you money.
Yep. What do you guys force people to use a particular open source license, or how does that
Any
work?
license you want.
Right, but by default, if you choose the free tool, all of your stuff is available for download. So it's by anyone.
You do not enforce the license.
Yeah, so it's public.
Right,
it's public, but we don't enforce the license. So the reason for that is we don't want to be like IP lawyers. Like, that's not the play. Yep. The play is not like a guerrilla warfare attack to be IP lawyers. So we give you an ability to express which license your content is under.
I was going to say that's important.
But we don't actually enforce it or track it. Like, if somebody forks your product and makes it private and then continues to develop on top of that, we don't actually do anything to stop them. And it's not, it's not that we hate people doing public stuff or anything like that. It's just that the complexity problem of tracking that is impossible.
Of course.
It's just an impossible
problem.
I
wouldn't bother. Yep. No, you can't do it.
So, I guess since we're on open source hardware, segue, I'm really excited about is the idea of having hardware libraries, so the equivalent of what we have in software, but you can add your power supply into a design. You can just pick somebody else's power supply and stick it in, and there's 120 volts in one side and 5 volts out the other.
Grown. Oh, no. Altium tried this concept, and it's just flawed.
Why?
Because the whole Altium idea behind this was that nobody would ever, 99% of the market would never have to design anything custom ever again.
Well,
all you'd have to do is build these building blocks. Well, they were serious about this, right? And then the majority of people would not have to design much custom, if anything. They choose all these building blocks off, and in the real world, it just leads to crappy designs. And it's not very practical in the real world.
So
I'm sorry.
So
I would agree.
Well,
yep. There you go.
Right. He agrees. I don't. Though.
Well, I mean, unless you argue it, though. Yeah.
But I think of you starting out into electronics. I did not have.
Oh, that's totally different ball game. Totally different ball game there.
We're not going to go in and Lego together. Cell phone, right?
Right.
I'm not suggesting.
Wait a second.
That.
So actually, right now or something? Actually, I'm gonna jump in on this one. So, I'm gonna just
you gonna let him finish?
Yeah,
I'm gonna let you finish.
No.
Full stop.
Full stop.
It's not gonna happen. Zach has strong opinions on this one.
So I was on the phone. I was on the phone with T.I. the other day, And TI is like a super, super vertical business, right? So like the guys that work on sensors don't talk to anybody else in the company, right? The guys that work on processors, same. Like, and you just like in all of these crazy vertical businesses. And so they do reference designs for all of their chips. And so if I'm doing a reference design for my chip, I have to figure out how to hook it up to power and hook it. And I got to go figure out from the TI catalog what the chips that I have to hook this up to are, right? So I go flip it out of the chip, and then I got to figure out what the reference design is, and I got to take that reference design, I got to drop it into my design, I got to tweak it as I see fit. And so I become a designer of all of these TI parts around the one at the core, around the one that I'm actually trying to hook up and build a reference design for. So like the very first use case that I see for what Mike's talking about, and what Mike's talking about, like I believe in ideologically, and I think we're going to get there, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but we'll just put that out there. But in the short term, what it's going to look like is people inside of large companies that are working on designs, or people that don't know what they don't know, can drop in a reference design instead of a chip, and it's just that it's that iteration speed, and and we're not giving anybody a guarantee that it's going to work or anything like that. What we're giving them is a guarantee that they're going to get a product out the door faster, and that might not work.
I don't agree with product out the door. I agree it's very useful.
They'll get a prototype fast.
They will get a prototype that they can play around with. Right. That's what I agree with.
And I think that's version one. And I think that's version one. And I don't like and so like the experiment. So as much as the like Indian auto routers is an experiment that we're running, what Mike's talking about is another experiment that we're running into whether or not there is a parallel for software libraries inside of hardware. And the answer might be no. Okay. Like the answer might be no. Sorry, it doesn't exist. But the answer also might be that hey, you just saved half of your design cycle. So I think
what's interesting about it is that obviously the free aspect of it, right? So we've talked. I think there's someone we talked about in the past on the show that was talking about like, okay, well, you design a block. And then you charge someone $5 for it, right? And it's like as soon as you put $1 transactional cost on that, that's no way. But if it's all open, especially if it's vendor driven, right, where they're already giving away these reference designs anyway, so I have to take this design and then pull it into my CAD software and like recreate it, and there's potential for error, that kind of thing. All right, yeah, I could see that much more likely than someone trying to sell me an IP block. I don't know if that's what it was like in Alton, Dave, the selling stuff.
Internally, we talked about a marketplace, and I think, nope. So it did come up, but
maybe like a tip jar?
It was a pretty close, it was a pretty short conversation between us.
So the logic on the marketplace side of things is if you give people a way to monetize work that they would otherwise not believe has value, you've done a very bad thing for the world, right?
Can you explain that more?
So it's this idea that I have to do a bunch of work to accomplish a goal. Most of that work is not special to me, right? Most of that work could be open sourced with the world. Most of that work, if I didn't have, if I could borrow somebody else's stuff, I would. Right. So this is I'm building OpenSSL, right? Or I'm building a web server or whatever, right? The web server is not the important thing. That's not the thing that I did that I built that was special, right? Especially at Upferver. We've built 100, I don't know, we use 100 pieces of open source, something like that, to build our product. All right. So it's and I saw this really, I used to work for a telecommunications company. I was the signal integrity guy. That was what I did there. And our software team used hundreds of pieces of open source, and our hardware team used 0. And most of what we built on the hardware team was not special. It was not things that we were the first person to build. It was not things that we even knew how to build. It wasn't things that we were the ones that knew the most about. But we had to build them. And those are all things that could have been open source. Those were all things that we could have given away. And it would have made the world better. And not only that, if there were things that already existed in the world, there were things that we could have taken from. So when we talk about the marketplace problem, it's if you give people a way to sell something that they're going to do anyways, they're going to keep it private, and they're going to offer it for sale. they're not going to give it away to the world, even though they should. And so you've taken this rising tide that was possible and you've killed it. Right? Like
you put a drain pipe underneath it.
Yeah, and it's just like, and it was like, it was entirely possible for a bunch of people to not give a shit about this IP that they built and share it with the world and make the world better for everybody. But then you put a price tag on it, right? And you made them choose the price of 0 instead of forcing it to be 0. And that's a really bad thing. And it's so like, and that's our logic behind, like, that's why we don't have, so it's the same reason we don't have a marketplace for kits, right? It's the same reason we don't have a marketplace for people to design things inside of Upverter and then try and sell them, right? Is we want people to go on to Upverter and find IP that is unrestricted, that they can take, that they can build on top of, that they can copy, that they can, and we want them to attribute it back to the editor, and we want good things to come out of that. It's not because we're evil people that we do it, but it's that idea that as soon as you can sell a kit on Upverter, you begin to lock up that IP that should have been free in the first place. And that's a really bad, that slows it all down.
Do you have to, why, if you're selling a kit, does it have to be locked up? Why can't you sell an open source hardware kit? This was somebody's question on Reddit, actually, DK Mac.
So it doesn't from a manufacturing point of view, but it's where the money comes from in that question. So like our manufacturing service, we make about a 30% margin on for offering the service, but that's it. Like that's the only money. So if we were to give people money for selling kits, like it would either come out of our cut or we would have to raise the price for the thing. And then
how about you're just the facilitator of the sale?
Yes, which is
rather than you're like it has nothing to do with you, but you just have the ability there for people to.
So, and that's what I'm talking about. When we become a facilitator of the sale, you've taken IP which somebody otherwise would have posted publicly on Upverter, and they're now charging money for it.
No, but the information could still be available, but their particular collaboration and their particular design that includes all this open hardware stuff is where the value is.
So I agree with you. So I can break down the mechanics of how it would work out, but it's one of those things where it's open source and public on Upverter. They've got a price next to it. They get some cut of that price. So a user doesn't click the button. They click the download button. They upload it into a new repository. Yep. They order their own copy of it, right? They save themselves $20. The guy doesn't get any money. It's one of those mechanics that breaks down whatever way you slice it. And it's not that we don't want people to get paid for the work that they're doing. It's that we don't want them to not be public in exchange for that profit. For does that make sense? So like, go post it on Tinder.
It does. So go post it on Tinder. It's self-regulating. I think this sort of stuff is quite self-regulating in this free open source hardware market. I mean, it comes down to one of the unwritten rules I talk about is that you don't, screw other people, and generally that's what happens.
Yeah, but then they become police people, right? I mean, they have to then police it, and it's I am siding with them, Dave. I think they made the right call.
So I think the stories that SparkFun tells about their experiences with open source are particularly telling of how that happens. And
in terms of the China copying their kits in 3 days.
Yeah.
Right.
And just the frustrations that they have with that. Now, I very much appreciate what they're doing. I love SparkFun. They're fantastic. They are in a very, very difficult position, and it is a constant uphill fight for them. I mean, they've got to stay on the edge or other people catch up.
Yeah.
But they also have a very huge viable business. We're talking about a $15-20 million turnover business or something.
Yeah.
And they're going great guns, and they survive because of their brand and because people like them and because of their value-added services.
I think the question is, if you were to break
those Chinese
SparkFun,
kits are not a threat.
Yeah. So if you were to break SparkFun up into same size, but you were to break it up into, say, 200 individuals with kits, whether that could exist or not in the face of
at the same level of 15 to 20 million distributed amongst 200,000 or 200 people. You're saying,
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, if you don't have the scale and the individual and the brand name behind it, then do you have that same kind of power of market, right? I mean, that's
Okay.
That's a
Well,
bit...
it's interesting. I just think that there's, the ability to offer that there and just let the market regulate itself. And you guys go, hey, we offer this ability to, advertise and your kit or whatever. It's open source, and well, if you want to sell it, then you can.
I'm just impressed they drew the line somewhere, Dave. I mean, they pull so much other stuff in there, like
fair call. I won't beat them over the head.
Layout, and
I won't beat them over the head for it. No.
Yeah, parts and
no.
So
nice
I
job,
can certainly understand.
You finally you found the line.
I will dive in that a company that we're very close with, Tindy, is doing a very good job of this of allowing people to sell open source.
Well, maybe you could tie into them and let them the data just flows into there, and Bob's your uncle.
And we so Emil and I have talked about that at length, and we're trying to figure out a good mechanic for that. But I think that might be what you're talking about. Is that Upworker is we're a design tool and we're a workshop where you can get stuff ordered, but as soon as you want a store, you have to go to somebody else who runs the store. And
that's a perfectly fine solution. Yeah,
definitely,
absolutely.
And I think we'd be happy with that. Yeah.
I think most people would be happy with that, so not a problem.
And in addition, I think they're doing a very good job, and I don't really want to build the tech to compete with somebody doing something good.
Right.
Well, it's just another thing that requires your resources, right? The more things you try and, the more things you try and bite off, the more you try and chew at once, the more strained your software resources are, and you try and be a jack of all trades, and that leads
only
to
so many hours
problems.
in the day.
And dollars in the bank.
That's what I'm talking about, guys. No auto router.
Yeah.
Okay, no simulation. Just stick to the core stuff. Okay, be the world's best online.
The power of the dark side.
There is something to be said for being the world's best in this narrow little niche. So many companies fail. I won't name names, Altium, try and be all things to all people, and it fails almost every time.
Yeah. I really do like the fact that you guys, I mean, the focusing on sharing, that is your killer app for sure. I mean, you guys said your schematic tool is stronger than your layout tool. You're working on both, obviously, but yeah, I mean, that is by far the killer app is the sharing, and then the back end stuff is coming up, I think, too. So that's what I'm. As
I said, in 5 years' time, I can see them being more of that type of company than a CAD. Yeah. EDA type company.
How do you guys feel about actual? I mean, you guys are tied into GitHub. At least you asked for my GitHub name and stuff. But what do you think about just storing crap on GitHub, like board files and stuff? Because I've started doing that a lot lately.
Yeah. So we know the GitHub guys quite well. Another of our mentors when we were going through the Y Combinator thing was actually the founders of GitHub. And we spent a lot of time with those guys trying to figure out, what the difference between their world and our world was, what the difference, between what should be in GitHub and what should be in Upworker is. And we're good friends with them. Actually, a number of the people that we raised money from came from introductions from GitHub, which is kind of cool. So we've got a good relationship with those guys. GitHub is incredibly good at linear text-based version control. That's what they've got an amazing front end built on top of the power of Git that is very good at those things. Upworker is very, very good at graph-based hardware type design file version and revision control. And so not everything looks like either, but things that look like text-based linear version control problems should probably be in GitHub. Things that look like hardware should probably be in Upworker. Things that
can you give examples?
So schematics, layouts. We're beginning to work on a broader set of the engineering world. But right now, schematics and layouts are the really big ones.
I can give a good example. Would be like you guys actually track individual, because you're doing in the browser. You actually track individual trace drawing between like, resistor 1 and resistor 2, whereas when I actually do a capture in GitHub, it's going to be like, all right, I put down resistors 1 through 10 and connected those all together because I don't want to track each individual one, but you guys actually track each individual thing.
Yep. You're also not going to be able to do like a merge or a diff in GitHub, right? Like you're just going to, you're doing version control, not source control in GitHub. Whereas like the parallel to source control in Upworker is actually like it's that action-based thing that you're talking about, right? Which is that you get each snippet of a trace, you get each move of a part, you get each little change that everybody did, and you can take that and diff it, merge it, figure out what people actually did. You can see what happened between versions instead of just picking a version and saying I want version 27. Right? Or I want to roll back to version 25, right? In Upworker, you can actually see what all of that means, and you can do it very atomic and very, very, individual revision based. So it's, so like it's been built in a different way to solve a different problem. There are a lot of things that should still be stored in GitHub, but things that Upworker is good at handling should obviously be stored in Upworker.
By the fact that you are logging, tracking, storing, recording every single movement the user makes. Like you move a part 1 pixel, in the schematic, you move a part 1 pixel across or something like that. You guys track and record that. Does that, and in a large design, that could be millions of little, and board layout and everything else. That could be millions of operations. Is that an issue in terms of storage of that amount of data?
An interesting challenge. It doesn't end up presenting a whole lot of problems, though. The little bits that you do, so the individual pokes and tweaks, end up getting all compressed down together into a single snapshot, right? The single state of the world right now.
Right. So you ultimately do a snapshot-based thing.
Oh, well, so we have the whole action stream, and then to be able to work with it in a useful way, we have the state of the world right now, and that's what gets passed around.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so if I'm on state of the world 16, right, that only has the changes that I've done since state of the world 16 like loaded up, right? If I need to go back and see the changes of state of the world 15, then it's a whole different set of changes that actually progress me towards 16. Is that the idea?
No, actually, the changes are from the last action, right? From the last click, here are the changes. But we can take that entire stream and merge it down into a single unit.
So does it? Could I take a board that's completely finished and completely undo the entire thing and watch it be uncreated?
Yes.
Yep. So
you guys should make a video of that. That'd
on
be
the
cool.
project page, there's the timeline, and you can play it backwards or forwards and see all of the little things jump around.
Like crisscross.
By not only you, but other people who you are working on the same design with?
Yes. Yeah. Or if it's public, anybody can go back and look at it.
Right.
So like Stevie was saying, so the snapshot's just like it's a data manageability thing. It's not actually a feature of the tool. When you load up Upworker, you get your undo history from the last time you were editing. So like if the first thing you did, so you load up a project, the first thing you can do is a Control Z and back up one action from the last time you loaded the tool. And that actually works. That's like a thing that you can do. And so we've got your undo redo history for all of time.
Excellent. We've been going for an hour and a half here, guys. You've blown your amp hour. Do we have any last questions, Chris?
Sounds weird.
Because we only got the one question.
Like
I'm sorry, I don't remember what I said there.
You're welcome.
All right. All right.
Actually, do you guys have any stats on how much forking is actually happening here? To have another terribly phrased statement.
It's tens of forks a day, I think, is what we're seeing.
Okay. Okay. That's
so
interesting.
For the last couple of years.
And then what about how many total
designs do you have? Yeah, how many total
18,000, give or take.
Wow. And across how many users? What's the average users?
It's like 11 or 12,000 users.
Right, so an average of like
one-ish,
almost two, one-ish, one point something projects.
And it's actually pretty chunky. Most of our users have one, and then a couple have like a whole ton.
Yeah, power distribution, all that, like Wikipedia, right?
Of course.
Yeah. We also see a decent number of users, certainly in the last couple of months, that don't have designs that they individually own. They're just there so that they can review other people's designs.
Oh, okay,
that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, and I bet that if that trend, like you said, is continuing with more people pulling in designs for reviews and stuff, that would definitely increase.
Yeah,
it's a good.
There are a lot of people that need to consume the design information that maybe don't need to be there as part of the composition.
Yeah, right.
Well, so there's also people working on the same project together. So one of them owns it. They have a team where the team owns it, but there are 3 or 4 people working on the project.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like what Michael Osman was talking about too, because he said, for the Hack RF stuff, it's like all the RF projects he does, one person does it, and then they use GitHub for similarly pulling down designs and then reviewing them, and then I think they don't have the same kind of change mechanism, but at least for reviewing, being able to look at this tag or this commit number, and that's how you review stuff. So, it seems similar.
Do you have any stats on how many users? Can you see which users are just coming in to have a little play around with it and then bugger off and don't come back? Or and
it's
got any stats?
It's a large percentage of our users. Yep, it's
right. Well, as you'd probably expect.
Yeah, so
right?
One of the things that we did to try and facilitate that, because we want users to be able to play with Upverter and be able to get a feel for whether or not it does what they need, was we removed the requirement of being a user to using the editor. So you can use the editor as a guest nowadays.
Nice.
So you can just go try it out. Like if you don't want to, really don't want to give us your email address,
if you don't want to sign up with your login, and
you can just go kick the tires.
That's very
cool.
And
actually, if somebody sends you a link to a public design, you can load that design up. You can't obviously edit their design, but you can load that design up and poke around inside of the editor environment. Without making changes, without being a user. So we've made a bunch of changes like that just to facilitate we call them lurkers. Facilitate the lurkers.
Yep.
But it is a large percentage of our user base, but it's like any content network. Like we have a lot of parallels to most other content networks, that there's a ton of people playing with stuff, and not actually contributing back.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you who do you see as your major competitors at the moment, and where do you sit in the? I guess your market is the web-based EDA tool market, right? Is that the
so I don't think that's who we're competing with. Though.
Right.
Okay.
So like we have kind of 3 levels to that. So we compete with other collaboration tools, right? So GitHub, so you put all your files in GitHub. You don't put them inside of anything. You just leave them in Dropbox or on an NFS server, or maybe you work alone. Right. So, we compete with the old way of doing things, and with other collaboration apps which are less attuned to hardware. We compete with other EDA software, and that's as like an editor, right? So as a content creation tool, we compete, with other content creation tools.
Because that's what people are going to come in for. They're going to come in for your PCB and schematic and stay around for other stuff,
and that's where I would put all of the other. That's where I'd put all of the other web-based tools. Is in that bracket.
That's where I'm saying. Where do you stand in relation to the other online CAD tools, for example, ignoring the collaboration stuff, which you're very good at, just in terms of the CAD
and I will answer that. Just the third bucket is as a data repository. So it's other places you can get data. So like Octoper for parts data, DigiKey for parts data, and any of those other kind of repository type things. And then like in terms of how we compete with the other tools, so the realer the tool, the better we do. So like the realer the editor capability, or the realer the collaboration, the better we compete. If all you want to do is like a super simple, RC time delay, simulation, Circuit Lab, do it, go for it. They're really, really, really good at that. So like, and they, and I think, I don't know, they have 10 times as many users as us maybe. So like, and then, they're very, very good at RC circuits. In terms of like the circuits.io and the other actual like CAD tools, like where you would actually be able to lay out a circuit board or something like that. I don't know numbers for most of the other guys, but just based on activity, we're maybe 10 or 100 times more active than they are. In terms of the big old desktop tools, like we don't make nearly the revenue that Altium makes. We're beginning to penetrate into Eagle's market. Cadence is almost zero at this point. So, it's still really early days on the, us versus desktop tools comparison.
That was a very business answer. Yep. We're way better than Eagle.
Right.
So how do we compete?
Altium, did you guys know Altium are going to come out with a low-cost tool soon?
Yes.
Shortly?
Yes.
I think they're going to goof it up, but that's just my personal opinion.
So I'm not sure the thing that's keeping people from using Altium is the cost. So
it certainly is.
It's the Australianness of it, isn't it? That's what it is.
No, they don't compete in the free, they don't compete in the hobbyist, hacker, maker, one-man band.
I don't know if that
business. They don't have a tool for that.
Not paid.
They do not.
They don't have a tool that people pay money for.
People certainly use it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's the de facto tool in China, Altium, but nobody buys it.
Right. Right. And that would be, and I think that would be my argument for Altium across the board, is that, yes, some people pay a lot of money to use Altium. I'm not sure the price tag is what keeps the people who don't pay a lot of money from using Altium.
Right, yeah. So what about expansion for you guys going forwards? I mean, you guys... Well, how about for our audience? Are you hiring any project gurus, people that you need to come in and just build? Obviously, you have a large contingency as your users, but you have maybe someone to build that 12-layer board.
Yeah, so
for you?
we just actually it's funny you mentioned we just hired our 12th guy,
nice.
and he's a double E, and his whole job is to work with the community. And just kind of generally support. We call the role customer success, and it's like a super douche. It's like a super. I know, right? It's like a
ninja.
Don't let Zach talk to
customer
engineers.
It's a super douchebag title, but the job, like his job, is to make our users more successful. Like that's it. And if that means lay out a board for them, then he's going to lay out a board for them. If it means, go enter a part into the library, he's going to go enter a part into the library. And so...
Could have just called him an electrical engineer, huh?
So that's, so we just hired him, but we're looking for 2 more people right now. And so that'll get us up to 14. And then we'll probably...
2 more to do what?
So 1 software, 1 hardware. So the software is just... It's a reasonably generic software development role, and the hardware role is to support and work with Anand and the community at just helping our users and building cool shit.
Right.
And so we're hiring for those 2 right now.
And if people are interested, where can they send their...
Jobs at upverter.com.
There you go. I'm sure you might get some, because we've had companies do this before on the
Greg
show, and they've been flooded.
Yeah, he had a whole bunch of people. So
they've hired good people.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
No,
and we don't charge. We got a free and open source.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. We should fix that, Dave.
Yeah, I know. We're not getting rich here, dude.
I know, right? Oh well.
I know.
That's all right. We do it to talk to fun people, and it has been fun talking to you guys. Definitely keep up the good work. I like the sharing model. Everything. That's definitely. Yep. You guys are doing a good job with that. So. And
I'm going to have to actually try it for something.
I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, guys.
Mike's gonna make them. Mike's gonna make it.
Oh yeah, we'll have a call, right? Like you said,
I've been using Altium for 25 years. I'm a hard sell. Okay?
Yeah, I bet.
And we'll start you off soft with design review. It's amazing. We'll get you in there.
Okay.
No problem.
But that would be good for Dave to make videos with that. Like have like the Hangouts like we did.
Yes,
that'd be a good thing.
Well, see, I will only. A lot of people ask me that. Why don't you make a video on Altium or some other, like tool that costs money? And I go, no, I'm only going to make videos on tools that have a free option.
Right.
Which you guys do. So,
do.
yeah.
And I'll slide in here. Like, what piece of software that's 25 years old can't be good, right? Right?
DOS.
DOS base, yeah.
Cool, guys.
Unix.
Well, thank you so much for having us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great. It's great to have you guys on.
Well, awesome show.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much. It was a great insight into the whole startup thing again, which we love getting on here. We always get a slightly different perspective each time we do it.
Yeah. So everyone should check out upverter.com and jobs@upverter.com if you want to join the guys here. Thanks again,
Awesome.
guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye.